Don't overpromise.
Let's go.
Here, can't get up here.
Good morning. I'd ask you that you bow with me, please. Gracious Heavenly Father, again we come asking you to forgive us of our sins, to lead and guide us. Lord, we thank you for the rain that we had yesterday, but for this day, my goodness, what a wonderful day. Let all our days be bright and sunny, regardless of the weather. Again, keep us in your arms. Continue to show us your mercy. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Y'all, let me go ahead and get something out of the way so that we'll... All right, let's go. Tomorrow's going to be a real light day. There's a lot of amendments that on some of the bills. I'm not going to do those amendments until tomorrow morning. But just keep in mind, tomorrow's going to be a light day. We want to do the budget. And I'd like to try to get you home before 10:30 at night. So just keep that in mind as we go through today. And I'm going to ask if everybody over here doesn't mind if Mr. Allison can come to the front. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I'm here to present House Bill 33. This is the House version of zero-based budgeting. This came out of committee last week, unanimously out of Chairman Martin's committee. Very briefly, it makes three fundamental changes to the bill that was voted on in the House last year. First of all, after meeting with John Brown and various budget analysts, it has been determined that zero-based budgeting in a 4-year cycle is impracticable. So therefore, we have decided in this bill that we want to do zero-based so that we will cover all departments and agencies over a 6-year period of time. The second major change is that rather than leaving which departments would be zero-based, open-ended, and in the hands of in the hands of a third party, we have set forth that the Joint Fiscal Affairs Subcommittee, which is a 10-member panel that is appointed. 10 members of the House, 10 members of the Senate will determine in the spring which departments will be zero-based, requiring that at least every department and state agency be zero-based at least once every 6 years, with the option of, if the committee so decides, that an agency can be reviewed a second time approximately 4 years later. That way, if they feel like they need to relook at one department or agency, they can do that. The final change is in Section 2.1 of the bill, which would establish a joint legislative budget office. This is a savings that would save the taxpayers over $1 million. It would unify the House Budget Office and the Senate Budget Office. I'm happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Do we have questions? Yes, we do, Ms. Smith.
Thank you. I just want to commend you for that bill. This has been an initiative for several years, and I think you've ironed out the kinks. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
That's it. You've been standing up there since 7:30. You want to get back up there?
My knees are getting weak, Mr. Chairman. I'd come before you this morning in the committee and ask that you would consider and put on the calendar House Bill 78 for tomorrow. It's the 2012 budget.
Move. Anybody opposed to that? No, he cannot. If you didn't sit through it this morning, no, you're just going to have to wait. Thank you, Mr. England.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Maxwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Second page, House Bill 308. All this does is put back into Title 53 a oversight that was taken out last year when we amended some laws dealing with the public retirement systems. This adds back the needed references concerning common law fiduciary duties for the boards of trustees of public retirement systems. Simple little correction.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Maxwell Meadows, whoever you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Mr. Parsons.
Thank you, Chairman Meadows, ladies and gentlemen of the Rules Committee. I have House Bill 332. It's on the back of the first page under Modified Structured Rule. This is a consumer-friendly bill that provides it on telecommunications bills that the fee for the Universal Access Fund will be listed on there on the bill, and a customer knows just what that is and what they're paying for.
Do we have any questions, Mr. Parsons? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more. I just want to ask again for House Bill 254. This is the bill that will save children's lives. It's the one that has to do with school buses and stop arms.
Any questions on that one? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Harbin.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I have two bills, if it pleases the chairman, I can request. One is House Bill 280. It's dealing with 911 services, just clarifies the definition of employee benefits and also allows those fully enhanced 911 systems, there are a few in the state, to expand outside of the four walls of the 911 center, continuing in the heart of the 911 system of trying to expand public safety. We're very limited on what they can spend the money on, but they can use those reserves if they're fully funded and they have a fully enhanced 911 system. That's what House Bill 280 does.
Questions?
The other one's House Bill 304, and that one really is just clarifying the language, changing from wireless communications to telephone service. We have some systems out there, some companies that don't want to participate in our 911 system. We think this language clarifies it to make sure that everyone participates and abides by the law.
Questions on that one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, House Bill 487 is on your last page under modified structure. This is a issue for large towing companies that deal with traffic mitigation throughout our interstates around the state. It is a weight bill. We all have concerns of many accidents on the interstate dealing with tractor trailers. These trucks, towing trucks, are used to remove traffic or to enhance traffic flow. Unfortunately, a lot of them are overweight when they go to an accident scene. And our other public safety office are finding these people after we contract with them through the department or whomever, Department of Transportation. And this is to help traffic mitigation and get accident trucks off the road as quickly as we can, and that's what it does.
Any questions, Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Mr. McCall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I hadn't bothered y'all in a couple of years, but House Bill 485, it's on the third page, I think, on the blue sheet on the modified structures. It's trying to deal with the worst problem agriculture has in this state, and that is feral hogs. The gist of the bill is on the second page, and it talks about, all it says is that people that trap them live have to release them in a closed area, and they can't turn them loose in the wild just to get some more established. If you got any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions? Wild hogs.
Appreciate you helping agriculture.
Wait 1 second, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to know if the esteemed Chair of Agriculture, have you heard that the solution to feral hogs is interbasin transfer?
Yes, ma'am. I'm just trying to keep interbasin transfer of hogs from happening right here in this bill.
Okay. Mr. Martin.
Mr. Chairman, how does it always have to follow something like that? Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Chairman, the Rules Committee, I bring to you today for introduction House Bill 405. This is the bill that's been talked about. We're creating a new category for our seniors to age in place in Georgia called assisted living. There's been a lot of work done on this really for over a decade, but especially in the last 8 to 12 months to bring industry groups together, advocates, co-aids, the state ombudsman. We think we have a piece of legislation that is going to get it done for us this year. And I know we have a busy day tomorrow, Mr. Chairman, but I'd just like to introduce this to the committee and ask for your consideration to put this on the calendar and get it crossed over to the Senate.
Any questions? Good bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I want to remind you of a couple of bills. I've been here a couple of times over the last week and a half or so. House Bill 265, which is the Criminal Justice Reform Council. House Bill 248, which is the Health Care Sharing Network. I want to remind you, those are good bills that we need to try to get on the calendar. Also, I want to introduce to you House Bill 324. House Bill 324 is a bill brought by the Department of Behavior, Health, and Developmental Disabilities in response to the settlement of the Department of Justice lawsuit, Americans with Disability Act lawsuit. And as a result of that lawsuit, the department will no longer be doing TIC or temporary and immediate care admissions for developmentally disabled after July 1st of this year. One of the requirements in the settlement is that we pass legislation to deal in statute with our ceasing of those TIC admissions as well. And House Bill 324 is a simple bill that repeals the temporary and immediate care admissions part of our code and brings us in line with the Department of Justice settlement.
Any questions? You got any more?
I do, but let's just stop right there for today. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're getting to be a regular here. Okay, thank you. Mr. Williams. Yes, go ahead, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring you again House Bill 70. Folk are waiting, but I just wanted to assure you that there are two unfounded rumors out there. One is that we will not be transporting bait to field trials. Secondly, it's certainly not going to be used to transport racehorses. Strictly haircuts.
I expect a lot of questions. Okay. Let's see. Who? Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Williams.
Yes, sir.
I have a question about the mobile barber shop. Is there anything? I didn't see anything in the bill that would prevent them from setting it up right next door to a barber shop that's already in business. Is that?
We looked at that, and primarily most of your cities, municipalities, or counties have ordinances, and certainly in shopping centers they already restrict on non-freestanding shops. But usually there would be an ordinance that would govern that, you know, to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Rules Committee. Like a ping pong ball, I am back before you with House Bill 62 from higher education. That is the bill that tweaks the special needs scholarship program. The issue that needed to be worked out in higher education was the issue of requiring notice to be sent to students to parents of students with an IEP via first-class mail. We have addressed that by simply requiring a letter or an email, and by letter we mean letter sent home, or an email prior to September 1st of each school year.
Questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Rules Committee. I come before you for the first time today with a bill, House Bill 277 on the second page. This is a bill concerning the hunting regulations in the state. You may or may not have received a couple of emails on this bill. Basically, it's a simple bill. It's already legal in the state of Georgia to have supplemental feed programs as a management tool. This bill simply strikes out the 200 yards and out-of-sight provision, and that change only applies to the southern hunting zone in the state. So there's no change in the northern zone. I'd like to add that you also have to have the landowner permission before you can hunt over bait supplemental feed. We also have a provision in the bill that gives the DNR the authority to step in if there was any issues with this practice, and allow them to immediately stop any type of feeding. And that's really it. It's just a simple change that only affects the southern zone, where I will add that this practice is overwhelmingly supported.
You got questions? Ms. Cooper.
Representative Shaw, does this mean that you're just going to be able to get as close as possible and be able to shoot Bambi's mother with a gun or a bow and arrow?
I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Representative Cooper, this does not allow, I mean, you basically have ethics just like with anything, and if you take an outlaw is going to be an outlaw. This bill doesn't change it. The average hunter kills 1.3 deer a year, whereas they're entitled and by law can kill 12 deer a year. So I don't think this bill will solve our problems as far as the increasing size of the deer herd in the state, but it just simply allows folks to hunt like they do in Texas, South Carolina, many of the other states around us, and Florida included.
Mr. Setzer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question comes from somebody who sat in a deer stand with a 10-year-old for hours and hours and hours in the cold, not seeing anything. So I understand the desire on the hunting side. My concern is there a provision here for adjoining landowners? I know you said you've got to have the landowner's permission. But if I've got a 200-acre parcel of land where my belief as a landowner is that fair chase is the appropriate way to hunt, and the landowner adjoining me is providing a feed location for hunting over bait, I don't get to control the livestock that stay on my property. They move from property to property, as of course you know. Is there any provision in this bill that will allow adjoining landowners to have an impact of the practices adjoining their properties? What do you think?
Representative, this bill doesn't change what's already being done as far as that practice goes. Like I mentioned, it's already legal to have supplemental feeders, which is a widely accepted management tool across the country. And in your district, this change would not apply anyway. So in the southern zone only, the feeders are already there and they're legal. This simply just changes the fact that instead of having to have it 200 yards away, you can have it where you want to.
And again, there's not any rifle hunting in my district because I'm in the metro area. A lot of my hunting is in the southern district. I'm just concerned that there's becomes a perverse incentive for property owners that if effective hunting is going to happen, it's going to have to be over bait because the way it kind of twists it becomes harder and harder to hunt on property that's not over bait versus those that are. And I think it does have an impact on adjoining property.
Mr. Bearden.
Mr. Chairman, now no way does this affect the bag limit. If you got your tags, once you end up your tags, that's it.
That's it.
But I do have one question though. Does it cover constitutionally the Equal Protection Clause? Because my folks in my zone can't do this, only in the southern.
Well, we've had several substitutes to this bill, and the first bill did not have the change to. It was a change across the state, and it was we had some opposition, and I'd say most all of the opposition was coming from the northern zone. So that was just kind of a compromise, if you will, to try to make this to do what the majority of the people want. Thank you.
Ms. Hughley.
Chairman, to the author of the bill, deer and feral hogs were chosen because of their population, or why is it just those two animals?
Well, game birds like doves and ducks and so forth, you could not do this because they're federally protected birds. So what we do in the state, we can't make any changes to what's already the law there. But I will add that also, deer and feral hogs can be a nuisance to agriculture producers, and it's also a public safety issue. There was almost 50,000 deer collision claims in this state last year, costing our domiciled insurance companies over $150 million, and that does get passed down to our consumers and our citizens. Deer and feral hogs are really the only game animals we have out there that can be considered a public safety issue.
Mr. Benton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Shaw, I realize that y'all need this in South Georgia so Chairman Roberts can get his one deer a year, but are the hunters in South Georgia just not that good a shot that they need to have this?
Well, they're actually very good shots, and this bill doesn't really change the whole fair chase issue, in my opinion, because what is fair chase? Right now, you can hunt over a feed plot. You can go in and plant these same types of any type of crop, and you can basically have a smorgasbord of feeders. But so this, when you can shoot, and harvest an animal in an existing food plot, there's really not any difference between whether it's a feeder or a feed plot.
Mr. Chanel.
Mr. Chairman, President Shaw, have you considered, or would you consider a friendly amendment making it legal to shoot deer in gated communities in Georgia?
Well,
we don't have to worry about the feed. I mean, they're eating our shrubbery and flowers and trees and everything else.
Well, maybe if you put some feeders out in the woods around your house, then they'll go to those instead of your shrubbery.
Y'all, come. I've got button number 39 pressed, and there is nobody at button 39. Y'all look back over there. See? No, it's that. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shaw.
Thank you, members of the committee.
Ms. Holmes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the committee. This bill, House Bill 225, is just a simple bill that seeks to promote sustainable agriculture. It also defines sustainable agriculture in a way to be inclusive of all technology and stewardship practices that support farmers in this large and diverse industry. It's supported by all of the agricultural organizations and is good for strong economic development, which is so very vital to all of us. Thank you very much.
Any questions of Ms. Holmes? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Atwood. Mr. Atwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I ask for your favorable consideration of House Bill 415. It's a Jury Reform Act of 2011. It's on your second page. It will authorize a compiling of an inclusive statewide juror source list for use in selecting jurors at the county level.
It's a product of a 7-year effort on the part of the Supreme Court Jury Composition Committee. It was chaired by Justice Hugh Thompson, included judges, clerks, prosecutors, and defense attorneys, and it has been endorsed by the Judicial Council of Georgia, the State Bar, and the Council of Superior Court Clerks, as well as others. Essentially what it does is the bill will accomplish a more equitable selection of juries by doing it on a statewide level. They will compile a database utilizing driver's license lists, personal ID lists, voter lists, etc. They'll screen out felons, use the national change of address checks that will screen out those that have moved, and present those lists to the counties to use for their jury pool. And it's more constitutionally sound. If we don't do this, we face some potential constitutional problems. Georgia is the only one that currently is using a process called forced balancing, so it puts us more in concert with the courts. I know the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled against the current system that we have. That's essentially it, Mr. Chairman.
Questions? No questions.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if I could, before I step down, I would also ask for your consideration at the appropriate time of House Bill 261 that I previously presented. That was the disclosure of certain public records, keeping those exempt, principally being records identifying names of police officers or their instructors that have done training in security. It's a concern that we have. We've had some inquiries of police officers that have gone to Israel to do training from certain Middle Eastern organizations, and this is simply a bill to protect our police officers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If there's no questions, I'll step down.
No questions.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chokas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I've got two requests. The first one is House Bill 275, which I presented yesterday. It deals with do not resuscitate orders and more clarifies those so that healthcare officials working in nursing homes are allowed to carry out those orders. And the second bill that I have is HB 376, which is open modified on the first page, and that broadens the requirements for the honorary position of Sheriff Emeritus. Sheriff Emeritus currently requires 45 years of service and 75 years of age. We'd like to change that to 20 years of service and 65 years of age. There's no cost whatsoever. It's just an honorary status to our courageous law enforcement officers. If there's no questions.
Questions on either? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee.
Mr. Welch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I come to you again to request your favorable consideration of House Bill 339, which is on page 2 of your agenda today. And this again would modify the existing law concerning the emergency powers of the governor and judicial branch. This would specifically deal with tracking venues for appeals or challenges to vaccination orders or to quarantine orders, and also would set the appropriate appeal to the Georgia Supreme Court of decisions made by superior courts on those orders. It also allows for the judicial branch to extend the emergency power time to be that as the same time period set by the governor during an emergency event.
Any questions? Thank you. Mr. Flood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee. I bring for your consideration this morning two fairly simple local bills that are required to be on the general calendar. First is on page 1, about halfway down, House Bill 398. House Bill 398 was brought to me by the Pension Board for Fulton County employees to correct some typographical errors and to bring the plan into compliance with federal law. And that's all that it does.
Questions?
Just a quick question, since part of my district deals with Fulton County. Did the Fulton County Board of Education pass a resolution on this one?
They have not passed a resolution. We expect that they will have for me this morning a letter confirming their support. And there are members of the Fulton County School Board that are on the pension board.
I understand. I just want to make sure that the school board had it.
Yes, they are engaged and aware.
Okay.
The second measure.
Wait a second. Mr. Willard.
Mr. Chairman, let me ask this, Representative Flood. Also, I think you stated there is not a change in benefits. When I read the bill, I see there is a change in benefits. It may be contended there's a error because of leaving out a surviving spouse benefit from the previous bill, but I find that putting that in there does, in fact, increase benefits. Is that
I'm not sure what the reference you're making, Mr. Chairman, but there is no fiscal impact. There is a change, as an example, in changing the amount of time served in the military from 4 years to 5 years, which essentially could change benefits, but there is no fiscal impact. It doesn't increase the amount of benefits.
What I'm saying is the bill amendment that is before us does provide for a change of benefit because there is now a surviving spouse benefit. If they remarry, they will be continuing that payment.
And I believe that is true, and I believe that's also required under federal law.
You say federal law mandates that?
That doesn't mandate it.
But pension plan?
No, sir, it doesn't mandate it, but this brings the bill into compliance with law, federal law.
Thank you.
Next one.
Yes, sir. On page 2, near the bottom of the page, HB 411 is a bill that was brought to us by the probate court judge in Fayette County to change the election from partisan to a nonpartisan election.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Harden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Bring before you once again House Bill 323, halfway down the first page. Basically, this bill is going to bring us in compliance with federal law in regards to allowing auto dealers to perfect their liens, allow them time. The federal government noticed a few years ago that 20 days, as is current Georgia law and was then federal law, is not always enough time for auto dealers to perfect their liens in all cases, meaning that people would go and buy a car, file for bankruptcy, and the auto dealers had no recourse to reclaim their assets. So basically all this bill does is changes the current Georgia language from 20 days to perfect that lien to 30. If there's any questions, I'd be happy.
No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Members. Mr. Rice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to bring before the committee House Bill 96, under structured on the last page, for the incorporation of the city of Peachtree Corners. I have another bill which is right below that, which is H.R. 495, which is the formation of the Joint House-Senate Study Committee to study the funding formula for higher education in the state of Georgia. And, Mr. Chairman, if it please the Chairman, at some point in time, we'd like to bring out HB 59, which requires the university system of Georgia to use the SAVE system to ensure the lawful presence of the applicant for enrollment in the USG schools.
Any questions? If you've got questions of a member, raise your hand. No questions. Ms. Sheldon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you again, once again, House Bill 226. This is the creation of individual development accounts. They're basically match fund savings accounts for low income and developmental delay.
Ms. Cooper.
Is it working? Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Once again, I'd like to ask for House Bill 303, which is the one that's agreement between the physician's assistants and advanced practice nurses. Will expand some of the duties that they can do. Also, House Bill 343, this is one needed by the governor. It establishes crisis stabilization units. We have to do this to comply with the Fed and agreements that we did with them on mental health. And also House Bill 470, which deals with non-traditional nursing school graduates and the requirements that we put on them before they can be licensed in the state of Georgia.
Mr. Willard.
And for the two bills I have, which is House Bill 180 and House Bill 256, but I also want to address the bill that was brought by Mr. Atwood, which is House Bill 415, the jury composition bill. This is a needed piece of legislation that we need to have. There's a bill coming from both sides. The Senate has one, but I don't think theirs is out of committee. And I think it's important that we have this bill come through to keep it alive. There's challenges being made quite often with criminal case convictions, murder cases, because of the lack of our having a uniform system in Georgia for selecting jurors. And this does set up that system for having the state level compile the list, and then the counties will have a list at a much lesser cost than each one of them trying to compile it themselves. So there's also substantial cost savings.
What was the second bill?
256, which is a 911 bill, which is dealing with the ability to collect the services and distribute the money that comes in for what we call prepaid telephone.
Thank you.
Thank
you. Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the last page under the structure rule, House Bill 271, which is the Georgia Student Extracurricular Partnership Act. And I also want to mention Chairman Neal's bill, House Bill 248. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, tomorrow we're going to pass an appropriations bill that's going to increase the health insurance premium by 20% for our state employees, including those non-certified employees. And being one who has personally participated in a plan that's designed like House Bill 248, this can mean a great difference for those non-certified state employees to be able to participate in a plan like this, and I commend it to you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee.
Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to request 485 and 487. These are two good pieces of legislation. I'd also like to request 277. However, I realize that is not a Good Friday bill, and so I'm not requesting it for Friday. But I'd like to put my name back.
Another good move. Mr. Stevens.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move House Bill 457 back to the committee from which it came.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, it'll move back to committee. Mr. Weldon.
Wait a second. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm respectfully requesting that House Bill 272 be placed on the rules calendar. This is a bill that deletes a provision that gives 2 bites at the apple from someone who's accused of violating the law. And that's in state, doesn't affect any, that's in the trial court, doesn't affect any appeals whatsoever. And this will make for more efficiency in the juvenile courts. Also, I'd like to request for House Bill 373, which is 2/3 way down on the second page, and also House Bill 415. Thank you.
Mr. Hembry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to request on page 2 under the modified structured rule, House Bill 292, Employment Security, allows the Department of Labor to extend the rates and credits and make some other provisional changes under the Department of Labor.
Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to move for House Bill 376, the Sheriff Emeritus bill that we just heard. Also 167 on the Insurance Delivery Enhancement Act. Also, I agree with my colleague on House Bill 248 on the ministry sharing, and also like with House Bill 275, the cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Thank you.
Mr. Sir. Mr. Setzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good Friday bill, HB 33, Zero-Based Budget Act, passed overwhelmingly in this body in the Senate last year, and I think it's of great importance for this body to consider. Also would ask for whether Friday or another date, HB 59, requiring the SAFE system to be used in universities. We've had some real issues in my nearby university, Kennesaw State, where a young woman went through 3 years only to find out she wasn't, for it to be found out she wasn't there legally. The SAFE system could have prevented that from happening.
Mr. Benton.
Mr. Chairman, I couldn't remember whether you said those that had amendments we wouldn't talk about. I just wanted to mention House Bill 301. So.
Okay. Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would direct your attention to the first page under modified open House Bill 374. I'd like to request under the present cosmetology code as it is presently structured, there's a bifurcated process in getting your license, a practical as well as a written examination. Under the existing code, the written examination could have been taken 2-3 decades ago, and now you are able to do the internship and get your license. In the interim, the Secretary of State's office and the board has added requirements that they learn about disease, perception, and other issues. And this would just allow the code section to such that they would have to take the practical examination and written examination within 24 months of each other, or take continuing education courses to catch up. This is an ideal Friday bill in as much as it has not received a no vote or very little debate anywhere in the process. And as I believe the chair knows, the Secretary of State has also requested the bill.
Okay. Mr. Smyrie.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add my name to House Bill 70. Mr. Williams has been in here several times, and I've called and asked some people about that, and they think that's something that could be helpful in some of the rural communities and urban as well. But I'd like to add my name to it.
Ms. Hughley. I'm sorry. What number? What number are you? 35. Okay, I got my numbers wrong. Mr. Mosley.
Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, I'm asking for House Bill 398. I'll put my name by 398 and House Bill 411.
Ms. Drenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'd like to support House Bill 225. It simply defines the policy of this state to promote sustainable agriculture. And I'd also like to support House Bill 248. I've received a lot of emails asking me to support that, and I commend the authors.
Okay. Mr. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chairman, pursuant to Rule 33.3, I'd like to move that we limit debate on House Bill 47, which is on the calendar today. Time of debate not to exceed 2 hours. Allocation of time to be made at the discretion of the Speaker.
Your move. Anybody opposed? Okay. All right. Y'all ready? Friday agenda on the floor. HB 78, modified structure. Do I hear move? Any opposed? HB 314, modified structure. Do I hear move? Any objection? HB 308, modified structure. Any objection? SR 15. Any objection? That's it.